So, Faith, I think you're really going to like Tobias. He's a really cool entrepreneur, and he has been working with Kimball Musk for the last 8 years on this visionary, ambitious platform that grows healthy, fresh, organic food indoors.
Wow. I wish you would grow it in my house. Anyway, I can't wait to meet him. And that's not a bad person to have behind you, Kimball Musk.
No,
Yeah.
no, and yeah, and as you know, as you'll hear, because we've talked about this in the past, Kimball is focused on changing this industrial food system, which is killing a lot of people and taking a lot of resources
And
out of the
killing
planet.
a lot
So
of beautiful animals. It's disgusting. Anyway, that's my opinion.
wherever you look, it ain't good.
No. But thank you for bringing him to us. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, and let's bring on Tobias.
So, Tobias, just in your own words, could you just tell our audience what you do with your Square Roots indoor farms? What is it?
Yeah, so what is Square Roots? So Square Roots is an indoor farm, and that's kind of literally what it is, right? It is a farm that is indoors. What that then means is that because it's indoors, we can control the climate in this farm literally 365 days a year. So we can always make it the perfect climate to grow beautiful plants. So we're all in New York, as we just established. It's coming up to the end of January. It's probably going to snow tonight. It is pretty miserable. There is not a lot of food growing outdoors in our area right now. But in the Square Roots farm, it's probably 70 degrees, 75% humidity, perfect light. Basically, the plants that we have in there are really, really happy right now. And they're growing as if it's like Italy in June, right?
So what do you grow in there? What are you growing?
So in our farm, we're growing a range of herbs and leafy greens, salads, microgreens, all sorts of things. And then we'll grow that in the farm. That tends to take about 4 weeks to go from seed to harvest. Then we harvest and we pack. And then we sell that product through food service, so to restaurants and to grocery retail stores, all under the Square Roots brand. So in New York, for example, you can buy it in, I don't know, maybe 150 different retail stores across the city.
Really?
The Whole Foods and the Morton Williams and all those brand names that you love in New York. Yeah.
Can I subscribe just as a person?
Subscribe and sort of have a CSA and get a weekly delivery of food.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty wonderful. It's really a case of focus. So we sell now sort of exclusively in those supermarkets and at those restaurants where you can buy the food. But we have certainly thought about home delivery.
Well, just for me, I don't care. So does stuff fall on it? So I understand, I love it that odd things like contaminated particles can't fall on it, I'm assuming.
Wow. Yeah. So again, these indoor farms are in what are called controlled environments.
But when it leaves, are things falling on it or are people touching it?
Well, inside the farm, we'll go from seed to package, right? And so before it leaves the facility, it is in a package, right? And so it's very food safe. But more importantly, I think inside the farm with that control, the farm is what is known as a biosecure facility, which basically means no nasty pests and bugs can get in there. And so as a consequence, that means we don't need to use any pesticides, right?
But so do people touch it though?
Humans touch it with gloves. Yep. But the whole facility, soup to nuts, is very much geared around food safety and people safety. There's a technical term for this. It's called a GAP Harmonized Plus Farm. And what that is a USDA certification to say that the facility is of a very, very high standard with regards to food quality and people safety.
Can we just back up and we'll go forward? But back up,
Sure.
Because when we met, you were not in the lettuce pushing business. You were in the image pushing business.
Very
So
true.
just share with Faith and I and our listeners how you ended up here, what the journey was, how you met Kimball, if that's okay, and sort of what brought you to this moment.
It's a long story, right? I mean, I'm 50 now, so I've got kind of 30 years of winding story there, I guess, in my career. I'm a techie by nature, right? Obviously, you can hear from the accent. I grew up in the UK, PhD in AI. That subsequently took me to Silicon Valley, and I've spent most of my career in early stage tech companies, which is where I met a chap called Kimball Musk, that you referenced.
Is that
there,
any
Adam,
relationship to Elon Musk?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh. And we've worked on and off together for probably 15 years at this point. One of the companies that we had together maybe 12 or 13 years ago was a very early social media analytics company. I was the CEO of that company. It ended up being acquired by Walmart, of all people. And as part of that transaction, I went to work at Walmart for a year. And one of the things that they had me do with my AI, big data, analytics background was study global grocery buying behaviors. And to see if I could see any insights or, what people were talking about. And when at Walmart scale, I think at the time they had something like 300 million weekly grocery shoppers all around the world. That is a lot of data that, is all there around, a lot of food basically flying all around the world, right? It was so easy to see this that, people in the UK wanted to eat bananas. And I was like, okay, well, when I grew up in the UK, they sure as hell didn't grow bananas there because the climate is miserable. Like, where did those bananas come from? And where did this kiwi fruit come from? And where did this melon come from? And when you start asking those questions, you can see that we're all currently living on what's known as the industrial food system that does a really, really, really good job of shifting this food from one part of the world to the other so that we can, eat whatever we want, whenever we want. But of course, when you do that, when you ship that food, there's, enormous carbon footprint from all of that transport. B, the quality of the food at the end of that supply chain is, often not as good as it should be. Obviously, food is breaking down and, as it's traveling, it's kind of getting worse. So, I was looking at this thinking, okay, I'm not sure this is really good for people or planet. I can see how you can make a profit out of it, but there has to be a better way.
There's also massive waste.
40% huge amount of waste.
40% of food is wasted, which accounts for about 9% of global warming.
Well, I was going to say, people don't realize that food waste is a huge contributor to CO2 emissions, right? Because that food ends up in landfill, that gives off methane. It's awful. So yeah, whichever way you look, the industrial food system is really bad. And we got to come up with a better one. And so that sort of planted the seed for Square Roots. Adam, I'm sure you've been around lots of entrepreneurs. I met you, after that Walmart experience, right? And I was at another sort of consumer mobile tech company that was, doing mobile photos and filters, and that was all very fun. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't get this food system thing out of the back of my mind. And so, that photo editing company was successfully acquired by Adobe, which then gave me the opportunity to sort of think about what comes next. So that would have been 5 or 6 years ago. And I was like, I'm still obsessed with this food thing that I saw at Walmart a decade ago. So I spent a little bit of time with Kimball, who's great to help you, think big and think scale and figure out how this is going to change the world. And, long story short, we came up with Square Root. So that would have been about 5 and a bit years ago.
What does Kimball do in his spare time?
Well, he is actually, the reason that I talked to him is, I'd met him through tech. But he has actually spent the last, I want to say 20 years working to get America off this industrial food system and onto a more local, sustainable food system.
That's good.
So he does that through a number of initiatives, actually, as a chain of restaurants across the Midwest called The Kitchen. and they were actually one of the first restaurant chains to source all of their food from local farmers. That sounds very
That's
usual today,
great.
but when we
Wow.
started 20 years ago, that was like a very alien
It was
concept.
unheard of, really.
And like
He and
zero
that,
waste restaurants, and I mean, it's phenomenal. Um, there's a story
and
actually.
good, and the food is
Food's
good.
great.
I've eaten in them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there's a story I remember him telling me that they opened a new restaurant in Denver, and after a month, the landlord came to them and said, "Hey guys, look, you must be putting your waste in the wrong place, and like this is going to cause major trouble." And Kim was like, "What are you doing, mate? We have zero waste." Like literally, it was like a very sort of forward thinking in terms of sustainability model. Anyway, so he has that. He has a non-profit called Big Green, which before the pandemic was building like space age vegetable gardens in schools, basically, and helping kids kind of learn how to grow food and see the value of that. That sort of pivoted through the pandemic, obviously, when schools shut down, and it's more of a kind of they match up with local non-profits now and do a lot of good work. So anyway, long story short, he's been thinking about local sustainable food systems for a long time. And, it's pretty obvious that if you marry our tech backgrounds with, his food knowledge and my food curiosity, I guess, that I gained at Walmart, you put all that together,
yeah.
chances are we're going to come up with something interesting. So there you go.
So does Walmart carry square roots?
Walmart today does not carry square roots, but that doesn't
And
mean they will not in the future.
why do you think so? Why do you think they're not?
Well, I mean, it's not a particular sort of comment on Walmart, but it is very interesting having spent a career in tech companies, especially consumer tech companies, now being in square roots, needing to sell into grocery retail stores. And boy, oh boy, is that different.
Well, say more.
I love them to bits, but they can be, it's a very different sales process, right? It's much more, hand to hand. You've got to go in and you've got to kind of become best friends with, the buyer in the store, and it's all about relationships.
They're merchants. They're basic merchants.
They are, but actually, I love this, and I love going into the store and telling that story and getting people to, taste the food and try the food. And then you explain to them that, this was grown 2 miles away. And because it was grown 2 miles away, that means, we can guarantee consistency of supply. It's going to be here every day because we're only 2 miles away, right? B, because it's 2 miles away, you're going to get it literally the same day as we harvest it. So it's going to be the freshest food ever. It's going to smell amazing. And then because of that very short supply chain, when it lands on your supermarket shelf, it's going to stay good for weeks. A lot of the food that turns up at a supermarket is kind of going bad within 2 or 3 days, right? Our product is guaranteed for 2 or 3 weeks. So you can get in there and tell that story. Yeah, it's a huge story.
How does it stay fresh for 3 weeks?
Well, it's grown in perfect conditions.
Yeah.
So the plant is as happiest as it can be. And then it goes from the farm to the store the same day as we harvest it.
I got that.
Right? Most product has been shipped, from across the other side of the world, right? Or at least across the country. So it's already been picked and has been traveling for a week or more before you get it, right? So it's kind of already halfway through.
Well, yeah, it's sitting in a refrigerated truck, then it goes into a warehouse, then it goes to the back of the supermarket.
No, I know why that is not, but I'm curious that if you pick a lettuce out of your garden, it will hold for 3 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, listen, as a Brit, the most famous example actually was when Liz Truss became Prime Minister in England during the summer. I think she was Prime Minister for 42 days or something. And one of the tabloid newspapers actually held an online competition between Liz Truss and a lettuce to see which one would last longer. And the locally grown garden lettuce lasted longer than Liz Truss did.
It was a brilliant. It was the Daily Mail. It was the Daily Mail, I think. It was a brilliant.
Or the Star or one
newspaper
of those.
ploy. Because you saw this lettuce. This lettuce eventually rotting, and she rotted first.
That's right.
Talk to us about sort of your farmers and the ecosystem that you've built to train young people, empower them with new skills, and abilities, and then they go out into the world and they could have careers because of the way you've trained them.
Yeah, no, it's an important part of the model. I think when Kimber and I first started talking about this, there were kind of two different things, but led us to the same area. One was we have both benefited from incredible mentors, who've helped us along the way. I'm sure we've all got stories of, that person who gave us that advice at the age of, 25, which changed our life or whatever. And like, we wanted to kind of, bake something like that into the model. And then the second thing was, as we thought about square roots at scale, the vision here is to ultimately feed every consumer on the planet with locally grown food, which then means square roots farms in every city in every country around the world. And we quickly realized that we would run out of qualified people to run these farms. And so we would need to bake in some sort of mechanism where we could, train people to run these facilities, right? And so what that developed into is something called the Next Gen Farmer Training Program, where we've made it very accessible, especially for young people, to join the company. Very limited experience, but with training, with a lot of software that we've built, actually, which gives kind of folks guide rails of what to do in the farms during the day. We can get people up to speed so that they can become very productive farmers really, really quickly. And then obviously take on more responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. And within the company, there's very, very accelerated career growth. If I look around the company now at sort of our 20 strong leadership team, half of them probably joined us as apprentice growers with no experience. And, 4 or 5 years later, they're running big chunks of the company. I feel really proud of that. Actually, it's been really, really good.
How many do you have now? How many growing facilities do you have now? And what's the cost of establishing one?
Yeah. So
what's the payout?
Yeah. So we're mostly in the Midwest. So we are, New York or Brooklyn, New York is sort of our original farm. It's more like an R&D center, really. Sort of the big world-class sort of commercial scale facilities we have are in Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Kentucky. And actually, those facilities, we partner with a company called Gordon Food Service with these facilities. So Gordon Food Service, as the name implies, is a large food service distribution company, right? So their trucks take food to tens of thousands of restaurants all across the country. This is an enormous company, right? 25,000 employees, probably 25 billion in revenue, like a big, big, big company. And what we do is we deploy our farms literally on their distribution centers, right? And then we operate the farm. So we hire the team, we grow the food, we pack the food, and then that food goes on the Gordon Food Service distribution trucks and, goes out to all of the restaurants that they service. So when
that has to lengthen the 2-mile window, obviously, if they're going to send it off from the center.
You would be really surprised, Adam, actually. I mean, it massively shortens their typical supply chain, right? Because typically it's come from the other side of the world or the other side of the country to get to their distribution center. Whereas in ours, it's harvested, goes into our cold storage. We then open the door and walk into their cold storage, and then boom, it's on a truck.
Right.
And they run what's known as just-in-time programs where we're literally harvesting on demand for customers, right? So even there, we're getting food to customers, often the same day, right? If not the day after. So really short supply chain. Yeah, it's very, really, really impressive, actually, the way that they're able to do that. But yeah, and I think for us, as engineers, we've sort of developed a modular architecture for these farms, the actual sort of physical assets, and that allows us really to scale a farm appropriately for any market. We can kind of scale up or down depending on the size of the market. Maybe we'll have a bigger one to service Chicago than we would do Milwaukee, for example, right? You can just kind of scale these things up and down. And yeah, I mean, once, typically we'll sit down with Gordon Food Service, figure out, where they think the opportunity is with their customers. From that moment where it's like, hey, great, we're going to build the next farm in Kentucky. 6 months later, the farm's popped up, ready to run again, because it's all sort of software driven. You literally press the button and turn it on, and the farm kind of configures itself to be the optimum climate to grow whatever crops you want to grow in that local market, and the thing gets up and running really, really quickly, actually.
So, are you helping at all with the food deserts? How is that working?
Yeah, it's we get the question a lot. The questions will come with, okay, so food deserts, how are you solving that problem? Or I think what we've had to do when we think about impact is think about areas that we've got the skills to actually do kind of a really good job at, and we can kind of do quickly and do it in a square rootsy way, right? So when we think about impact, we think about environmental sustainability, DI, empowering the next generation of farmers, and strengthening local communities, right? So I'll just talk briefly about those. So environmental sustainability, really what that means for us right now is getting to a carbon neutral and eventually a resource positive food system, right? The biggest use, or the biggest kind of CO2 emissions for us is energy, right? You need energy to power the lights of these farms. And actually with Gordon Food Service, we're now working with them on a program where every farm we build, we're also now deploying a solar array with battery storage, so that these farms will be powered by on-site renewables.
I think you have access to batteries.
Well, yeah, that's a little bit more complicated. Let's see. I'm not going to go there. So that's sort of environmental sustainability. Strengthening local communities is really about hiring, right? Whenever we open a new facility, we like to hire 80% of the team from the local market. Each facility is about sort of 20, 25 people. Empowering the next generation, we've sort of talked about that, right? How we structure the company to bring young people in and give them accelerated careers. And then DI, I think every company is going to tell you they do DI. I think, frankly, a lot of people stuck a black square on Instagram in 2020 and called it a day.
Yeah.
We don't do that, right? We have, diversity hiring targets, for example. We work with an external consultant, McKinsey Mac Group, who are helping us sort of create a long-term roadmap to become a very explicit anti-racist company. And we've got to weave that into the DNA of the company, and that will take time, but we're very committed to do that, for example. So those are the areas of impact that we do focus on. And, eventually we'll pick off other areas, but those are the 4 areas that we focus on.
So just to kind of pick up on Faith's question, what it sounds like is you are fundamentally gated by the retail infrastructure in any marginalized community. And if there is a food desert, like in Camden, Faith, we used to go to Campbell's, and that's classic food desert. And block after block after block, you can't get a banana. If there is no retail structure for you to sell into, you can't really fix that. That's
right. Or restaurant. That's exactly right. Yeah. And, that's a massive challenge.
Why? Because you could open up a little
pop-up.
Yeah. Just for that.
Yeah, we could, but we could, right? But then, where's the bread come from? Where's the cereal come from? Where's the milk? You're basically starting up
just for that. Just for that.
Just for greens?
No. Yeah.
Well, it actually, it is, you were joking at the beginning, can I get a delivery? We actually, 5 or 6 years ago, when we were experimenting with different business models, we actually did experiment with, it wasn't delivery to your home, it was delivery to your desk, right? It was almost like Uber for salads, right? You could hit a button on an app and a farm would run into the farm and harvest a salad and turn up at your desk with it. And, the people loved that experience once, but then actually what they wanted to do was do their entire grocery shopping. Right, they didn't want the farmer just turning up with some kale, right? They wanted all the other bits, right? And so I think when I think about, a pop-up shop that just sells square roots greens,
I have to challenge that a little bit.
Okay.
Because people love farmers markets.
Well, that is true.
And they don't have all this stuff. I mean, maybe they have a little, Something,
that
just
is
something
true.
for you to think about. I mean, if you
Well,
feel
I'll
like
think
it,
about it. And if you would like to help us put it together,
I would. I'll help you.
please
Sure.
come on down.
Did you
I'd love to hear the
did
I
you
idea.
could work
distribute?
there.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Did you distribute through Good Eggs when they were around?
What's that? Tell us what's
It
that
was a whole, it was basically farm to it was a farm based delivery
for
system.
Yeah,
eggs?
So it took sort
that's
of
right.
this for everything. It was just called Good Eggs, but
Oh,
they would aggregate farmers' produce. It's like your farmers market idea. It would be put in I think in a Good Eggs truck, and then it would be dropped off. And it was not the unit economics were not there for them.
That's right. Yeah, and I think they exited from memory. I think they exited the New York market just as we were getting our legs, actually. So we kind of like crossed each other.
Yeah,
But no, we never worked with them. I think they're being very successful now in their kind of home market in the Bay Area, right? Is my
they're in the Bay
understanding.
Area.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I remember when I was talking to Kimball, he was very poetic and lyrical about spectrum. And he was describing
Light
how by
spectrum.
controlling light spectrum, yes,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to me, who's on the spectrum, not that spectrum.
okay.
So, and he was really passionate about how using AI to
Mm-hmm.
change and balance the light spectrum. To your metaphor about the plants were happy, you could really make
Mm-hmm.
the plants ecstatic through that. So
Yeah.
maybe just talk about people just think light is light. So maybe you can talk about
Well,
how.
Oh,
but
no,
first,
no, not at all.
but first, explain to everybody what do you mean by spectrum?
Yeah, well, I can talk about it, right? So
Okay.
what does a plant need to grow, right? It
Okay.
needs energy from a light source, which outdoors is the sun. And then it needs the ability to take up nutrients, right? So either the nutrients are in the soil and it rains, which makes them soluble, and then the roots can suck them up. Or in Square Root's case, there is no soil. The nutrients are mixed with the water, and the plants are growing in what's known as a hydroponic system, right? So there's no soil; it's just kind of nutrient-rich water that is growing the plants. So you've got light, or you've got energy from light. You've got irrigation, and a bit of wind is helpful as well, actually. And so let's talk about light, right? So in essence, what the without getting too lost in the science, right? Really, you have to think about photosynthesis, right? And what is happening is the plant is basically converting the energy from the light source into biomass, right? And so the more biomass you're trying to produce, the more energy is required, right? And so when you're growing products like leafy greens and herbs and salad mixes, there's not too much biomass there, so you don't need that much energy. And so given our light is artificial light, LED lights of a certain spectrum, which I'll talk about, we can grow that product and it doesn't cost too much in terms of energy, so we can get that product to market at a very competitive price with a field farmer. In terms of the different spectrums that you need, really what you're trying to do is figure out, which spectrum of light that plant is sort of using at various stages of its growth that will then promote certain characteristics. Right, one characteristic is just mass, right? You want to eat something, but other characteristics could be things like, the color, right, or the spiciness of certain varieties, or you can do a lot changing humidity and temperature and light and nutrients and how long those lights are on. There's a million and one different parameters that you can play with that result in a crop that has slightly different characteristics. Right, so let me just explain why that might be useful. Right, we could go to a chef with our brand new arugula salad, and the chef could say, "Do you know what, guys? I really like this. Texture's great, the leaf size is perfect, everything's great. I just want it to be a bit more peppery, please." And we would then go back to our R&D facility and our kind of plant science guys, and they go, "Okay, well, if we change the light spectrum here and we add this nutrient, we do this, we'll get the same volume, the same leaf size, but it will be slightly more peppery."
Wow.
And you can dial that in for that chef, and then just grow at commercial volumes to that exact. It's what's known as a golden recipe, right? To use that exact golden recipe.
That's amazing.
Fascinating. Yeah, I want to ask you about the hydroponics because
Sure.
there are some people, and we talked about this, who believe that the terroir, the sensory quality of growing in dirt, like wine grown in dirt or anything
Mm-hmm.
grown in dirt,
Mm-hmm.
can never be equaled when you grow
Mm-hmm.
hydroponically. But you
Mm-hmm.
guys think you can equal
Yeah.
the sensory experience.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, there's a qualitative, assessment there. Okay, which it's like, okay, well, taste ours versus taste yours, and what do you
Right.
think is better? Um, and then there's a quantitative one, right? Okay, well, what's the bricks number, right? Which would sort of kind of captures like the sugar levels in there, right? Nutrient testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And any which way you look at it,
Right.
and the reason for that, again, right? If you think about what's happening in the soil, right? You've got nutrients that are in the soil; they're inaccessible to the plant, really. Um, and sometimes those nutrients have been input artificially, right? Fertilizers and the whole thing. And then it rains, right? And those nutrients then become, they're soluble, right? So then they become accessible to the plant through the root system, and up they suck. In our system, it's just a more scientific and precise approach, right? Which is we're mixing the nutrient with the waters, and then feeding that water to the plant, and the plant is absorbing it in exactly the same way.
It's always available at a stable and predictable level.
Correct. That's it. Which then gives you this stable, predictable, very consistent product, right?
Output.
Yeah. I mean, you can taste our arugula in February, and it tastes exactly the
Tastes the
same as
same.
it does in June, right? Yeah.
So how expensive is it to build a facility, and are you capital constrained, or why aren't you feeding everybody on the planet yet, as you
Yeah, it's a
proposed?
very good question. How much does it cost to build a facility? It depends how big they are, right? So in the US, we're not the only indoor farming company, right?
Right.
There are, a handful of others out there that are making a name for themselves. There are sort of two different formats that people are following. One is what's known as the plant factory format. This is sort of very influenced by what happened in Japan about 10 years ago. They're sort of leading this space where folks are building these sort of football stadium sized, ginormous facilities that, can be $100 million, right? And take 4 or 5 years to build. And
Like what you see in Leeming.
Right. And obviously everyone will talk about pros and cons, right? I can see economies of scale when you go that size, but also like you're growing so many microgreens in that facility that like, everyone in the country can be fed, right? And so you end up distributing that food across the country, right? So you're sort of replacing one industrial system with another. What we've done instead is we build much smaller footprint farms. Ours might cost $5 or $6 million, take 3 or 6 months to build rather than sort of 3 years to build. And then we're growing enough food there to service, 200 supermarkets in that radius, right? And by doing that, then you can, deliver on this promise of food on the supermarket shelf the same day as you harvest, right? So it is local, it lasts a long time, all of those things that we've talked about. And you end up with a highly distributed network of sort of, small size food production units, right? As opposed to a small number of very large food production units, which is sort of the other approach. So, who knows which is the right approach?
It's like farming used to be before industrial farming.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I say pros and cons, who knows? Obviously, I believe the way we've done it is the right way to do it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. But I've said this to a few people before, is that indoor farming to me today, 2023, it kind of feels like the internet did in 1995 when, I was there, which is, there's a small number of people who are sort of super nerdy and into it and figuring this thing out. And, it's inevitable.
Right.
But like what shape it's going to be 20 years from now, like who knows, like are one of us going to be the Facebook or the Twitter of, indoor farming? Like who knows? Or is it going to be someone else? It's a very, very fun time to be in
It
the
is.
industry.
And climate change I mean, the world we're in, look what's happening in California. Look what's happening. We're going to need to grow food in
Yeah.
controlled environments to feed the people on the planet.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no way to do it.
There's no doubt. And this is why I said, like, it is inevitable, right? You know, even if we weren't innovators and pushing the technology and getting more yield for lower cost and the whole thing, climate change is not slowing down. And so growing food outdoors is becoming increasingly risky, increasingly expensive, or in some areas, impossible. And so, yeah, right. You know, we have to very, very rapidly figure out new ways of growing the food to feed the world. You know, is indoor farming going to grow every single crop you can ever imagine and feed 10 billion people in the next 10 years? No, of course not, right? It is part of a new solution that is needed. But, you know, I think a really exciting and big part.
What would you ever think about if you want this thing to reach everybody? Would you ever think about franchising it?
Yeah, we have certainly had those conversations. I think right now, the DNA of the company is very much a kind of technology, you know, move fast, don't break too many things, because food safety is a concern. Move as fast as you can without breaking anything. But, you know, a lot of innovation, a lot of feedback loops. You know, every single minute that our farmers are in the farm, they're using our software that's guiding them, you know, through their day to day, but that is also capturing data about what is going on. You know, what is the yield? How was that affected by something that the farmer did or by a climate change that we made? Right, the whole system's learning. So for us right now, it makes much more sense for us to own and operate all of the facilities as we're still on that rapid learning curve, and then eventually one day maybe franchising makes sense.
Are the farmers owning a piece of the company?
Yeah, they all have equity, so they're you know, employees. So obviously they get the wages. We honor or we peg our hourly employees, which our farmers are, to the living wage scale. And then in addition to that, they have equity in the company, healthcare, learning stipends. Yeah, I think we certainly appreciate that. You know, without the farmers giving the love to the plants, then we don't have food to sell, right? So they're a very important part of the business.
What about, are you going to grow fruit?
Yeah, we have actually in our R&D farm. Man, we've grown like 200 different varieties of products in that farm, all the herbs and leafy greens, small fruiting crops, strawberries, tomatoes. I mean, we've even grown things like...
How about cannabis?
Yeah, that is... get asked about that a lot. As you can imagine, the underlying technology, you know, control climate, light, irrigation, etc. There's a lot of similarity in the growing systems. So yeah, I mean, we're not a million miles away. I mean, the way I always sort of answer that is, listen, the mission of Square Roots is to feed every consumer on the planet with locally grown food. Right, that is a different mission than provide access to high quality marijuana to anyone who wants it. Right, so it's just like we know our lane, and that's kind of, you know, everything is optimized around it.
You know, Faith was asking about franchise. We're always telling people to change the business model because that's sort of what we do. But $5-6 million doesn't sound like a lot of money for many towns, cities, small cities that are looking to become more progressive, attract younger people. You know, I think of Buttigieg when he was mayor in South Bend. Have you thought about public-private ownership of some of these facilities?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we have thought about it. You know, I think, you know, when you've been in startups for 20, 25 years, wow, I'm really old. You know, you see very clearly that startup land is littered with dead companies that didn't focus.
Yeah, you're right.
And, you know, there are so many opportunities for Square Roots. And one of the most difficult things in the day is saying no to 99% of those opportunities. That we're picking our lane and we're running. Now, when we've got 50 farms up and running and the things run on autopilot, and we're making bags of money, and and we'll start to think about other ways, right? But we sort of, we got to get to first base first, I think.
And how many are there now?
What do we got now? 5 commercial scale farms open today, and then a 6th one in Kentucky that is about to open. Actually, construction's done, team is in place. They're sort of doing all the biosecurity cleaning and bringing that to life, and then the first seeds go into that farm on March the 8th, I think. So we're kind of weeks away from that farm coming to life.
And how long does it take roughly for a farm to start to, as you say in the UK, wash its own hands, break even?
Well, pretty quickly, actually, because again, right, because each farm is built using the same modular architecture. Right. So we literally, on day one, we have a button, like if you're in a sales organization, you make a sale, you bang the gong. Well, for us in the farms, we press the button. It's called the basil button, and that just configures the farm to start growing basil. And boom, I can tell you in 4 weeks from now exactly the yield that is coming out of that facility, right? And so it's really a case of saying, okay, well, we know when the food's coming, we sell that in advance. And so, pretty much from the get-go, the farmer's up and running and, is able to sort of, operate at its, there's no sort of notion of long-term unit economics and the ramp to get there. It's well, this is how it operates from day one.
From day one.
Which is really nice.
So what would prevent somebody from copying you?
If they were crazy enough.
Right. A, they need to be crazy. B, they need to have smarter people than we have. And again, right, 25 years on the technology side. Wow. We have got some amazing people, which is really cool, who are just pushing leaps and leaps ahead. So, there's that. Frankly, it takes a lot to build the type of relationships that we have with these food distribution companies. If you don't have that, you've then got to figure out how to, get this food in the hands of customers, which is a whole different business. So I think there's lots of kind of, to use the jargon, right? There's a reasonable moat around the company that's sort of multifaceted, right? The business development or the sort of strategic relationships that we have, the quality of the food that we now know how to grow. That is enabled by technology that we've invested in for the last kind of 5 or 6 years.
Right.
So yeah, there's quite. It would be. Now I welcome the challenges and the competition because this market is so enormous that there isn't going to be everybody has to eat. Right, so there isn't just going to be one winner here. There's room for plenty of people. And honestly, philosophically, if you think about what we're trying to do, which is get off this industrial food system, which is terrible for people and the planet, and onto a more sustainable food system, well, there are going to be many, many, many square roots that need to happen to kind of make that happen. So I think most people in the industry have actually got a pretty similar mindset, and it's very collaborative and helpful, and we're all trying to help each other. Because the common enemy is the industrial food system, right? Not another indoor farming company.
But I think you're right. This is a multifaceted movement that needs you guys. It needs Freight Farm, who's doing it from their side, and
it needs lab grown cows, meat. That's the worst. All these cows that are killing our planet and the processing and the chickens and the.
I asked you before, what are some of the barriers to scale? Is it money, bandwidth, a combination?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because it sounds like you've got a fully baked model, Lego-like. You know how to build it. You have a SaaS operating system, essentially.
Yeah.
It's almost plug and play to some degree.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And where we've been really focused in the last 2 years is sort of optimizing the technology so that each facility that we build, the kind of 4-wall EBITDA of the farm is, compelling, such that then you're able to kind of get out of the world of, equity financing, right, venture financing, and into the world of debt financing, right? And
Right. Much more
once
favorable terms. You don't have to give away the equity.
well, the Fed isn't helping right now with that.
I know, but I know.
But yes, the general point is there. So I think we sort of crossed that threshold last year with the last farm that we opened, which was like really exciting. Honestly, I mean, you know me, Adam, like I exist to like build products and do cool stuff. And, for the first time in my life, I was really excited about hitting these financial metrics. I was like, who is this person? But now we're there and that's kind of opens up debt financing for us, which, means that, accessing those different pools of capital means we can probably hit the gas a little bit now. So year of the rabbit is it could be our year.
Yeah.
I think you should push that. Do you distribute to schools?
Well, through Gordon Food Service, yeah. So Gordon Food Service, their customers include restaurants, but also institutions, right, including schools. I believe actually from our Ohio farm, we work with a couple of schools down there, but it's not a relationship, for example, that Square Roots has directly with schools, right? It's all done.
It'd just be another way of feeding, these deserts through schools.
Absolutely.
These kids come to work, they come to school hungry.
Yeah.
And to give them such a high quality product would just be phenomenal.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. And every time we sort of open the farm for tours and we bring
kids,
kind of kids down. I mean, it's just amazing. You get a 14-year-old sort of pressing their nose up against the window and looking in and seeing a 22-year-old inside the farm, this high-tech farmer, surrounded by technology. This little 14-year-old's head explodes. It's like, I had no idea I could do that as a job.
Yeah. That's great.
This is amazing, right?
Great.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So has Alice Waters, is she, do you chat with her, talk to her? Is she involved?
I don't think I'm at a level where Alice Waters is taking my calls.
She would absolutely. No.
Yeah, I mean, she had her edible schoolyard project for years.
Yeah, that's right, actually. Yeah, that's right.
Do you want to talk to her?
Oh, if I'd love to show her a farm. I'd love to have her come in and taste our food and give us an opinion.
Okay.
I have one question. I think we're going to have to wrap, and that is about the Square Roots brand. So you've got a package. Sure. Consumer goes to the store. How aware are they of the brand? I assume you have a QR code that'll take them so they could learn where this food came from. How focused, to use your word, are you on building the depth of the consumer relationship?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very good question, actually, because I think historically in fresh produce, that hasn't really been a branded part of the supermarket. But now, because consumers are actively looking for, to be cliched about it, products with a purpose. So, they want to know, okay, is this sustainably grown? Who grew it? Who's the farmer? And actually, Square Roots is a real leader there in a long, long way. So we do have the QR code on the back of the package, but that QR code provides what we call pack level transparency, meaning here's my package of Square Roots basil.
Show it to us. Yes.
Here's my package of Square Roots basil. There's a QR code on the back. If I were to scan that QR code, it would open up a mobile web page that would tell me, when was that package packed? What farmer put the product in the package? A picture of what it looked like in the farm yesterday. The date of when it was seeded. Where did we source the seeds? Right, all the way back. So you get the complete story of the food at the pack level.
That's great.
So it's total transparency. Who grew your food and who touched it and where did it come from.
But do you think people know about? Do you think a lot of people know about Square Roots?
Not as many as you would like. I mean, until 10 billion people know what Square Roots is, I'm not going to stop.
I think not. I mean,
I agree.
And I think we wrote lots of books, and in some of our books we were saying people want to know origins.
Mhm.
of food. And there you have that on the back, but I didn't know about that. And I didn't know about square roots. And I'm
Yeah.
supposed to know about everything. So
The oracle.
I'm just wondering, you know, like, and do you have like little videos in supermarkets showing, like, you know, the farmers busy at work and things like that?
Yeah, little. I mean, again, right, you're working with the retail partners, so they're going to have their recommended, kind of formats for merchandising, whether that's sort of shelf talkers and wobblers, or we'll have people
But
going into the
just like
store.
the cosmetic people put their own people in the stores.
Yeah, we do exactly the same.
You do?
Yeah.
So tell me
But
what.
again, mainly in the Midwest, right? So most of our business today is Midwest.
And you have your own people standing there and explaining?
Exactly right. Big smiles.
Oh, can I see a video of that? Can you send me a video?
Yeah, probably. I mean, definitely we'll
I'll post it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we'll send you a link with a whole bunch of kind of video
Send me
assets.
links. Send me that back thing that shows a little happy farmer farming.
Yeah,
send me anything, because
transparency timeline.
like, you know, we both do push out a lot on social media, and I'd be really
we're
happy to do it.
Great.
Yeah, because this is exactly as Faith said, on trend with so many of the social and cultural forces we've been tracking for a long time.
Great. Well,
Okay.
your influence is clearly present.
No, because I love
all of
what
that
you're
coaching
doing.
you gave me 10 years ago.
I love what you're doing, and I wish you were doing it more for more people who really, really, really need it.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, don't talk about Musk, but talk about Tesla. When they kind of started, the vision there is, let's get off fossil fuels by giving electric cars to everyone, right? And you got to start somewhere, right? And they started with the $120,000 Roadster, that was available to a real small number of people. But by figuring that out, they kind of earned the right to do the Model S. And by figuring that out, you earn the right to do the Model 3. Here you are 15 years later, and we're getting close towards electric cars to everyone, right? And Square Roots is kind of on that journey.
Right. I don't know if Adam agrees with me 100%, but at least maybe 68%. But, I don't think they're going to be supermarkets. And then it's just like the cosmetic people. We told the Lauders, get the hell out of those department stores. They're going to be defunct. And I'm saying, get the hell out of those supermarkets and, own your own retail environment, or, like you say, selling direct. That would be my thought for you.
And 20 years ago, more now, in our book, Dictionary of the Future, we predicted Tesla. We said that in the future, there will be craft-like electric vehicles made that will be sold on the internet.
Wow.
Well, we'll send you a copy of that.
Genius.
Yeah.
So
we are geniuses, but so are you. And so what?
Yeah.
We have to get other people to believe this stuff, right?
Well, that's true. That is true. That is very, very true. Yeah.
Anyway, Tobias, I would love to meet you in person. I'm going to invite you over if you would come.
I would love to do that.
I'm just on 64th Street. It's not that bad.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Well, wow, you were right. He is everything. He is so... the one thing I'm really incredibly impressed with is his emphasis on focus, which, having ADHD, I'm not like, wow. So he just stays there, but I do think he could be doing a lot more with food deserts. I think he could open up, like you said, pop-ups. I would love to see that. And he better damn send me a lettuce. I want to experience it.
You like anything with pop in it, pop-ups, anything.
Popcorn, pop music,
maybe?
Pop-Tarts. I don't love Pop-Tart. Well, they've made them a little better.
They have.
Yeah.
Made them less cardboardy.
Yeah.
You and I both are not the greatest focusers in the world.
No, but that's why we have so much fun.
Exactly. And we can tell people what to do and then go defocus on something else.
Exactly.
But he's a great combination of an innovative, inventive human being who can still focus at the same time. And I think that's why he will be successful. He talked about Gordon, this big giant food supply company, billions of dollars. It's not easy for a tiny little startup to negotiate a deal like that. And that's really a testimony to his ability as an entrepreneur to understand how to make small, shake hands with big.
Yeah. I'm fascinated. You said that they're a $25 billion company.
Yeah.
I didn't ask him how big his was. He probably wouldn't have told me, but what do you think?
How much? Let's say he has 5 units, maybe. He's probably around 8 to 10 million in revenue, maybe less. I don't know. That would be my guess.
Yeah. I think he's got a long, beautiful future ahead of him. And he's going to make a lot of green if it works.
Yes. Yes.
Couldn't
a lot of
help
peppery arugula.
Yeah.
No more puns.
Yeah.
Before Faith and I go, I just want to remind you to subscribe to Jolty, follow us, listen on your podcast platform of choice, tell your friends, make your enemies like you better, and get Jolty out into the world. We thank you.
Yeah, beam us up, babies. Ciao.
Beam us up, keep us up.